Alright, so let's go ahead and discuss this issue, and I'm stunned that it's even become an issue for people. The debate of the strong female character is one that should not exist. Of course, women can be strong and well written without being Mary Sue's. I think we all know that. Of course, women can and should be written as much more than just love interests or objects of desire as well, but it, like so many things, is about how you approach the character. And today I'd like to discuss what it takes to build a strong female character. I'll use real examples, ones that I've created, and we'll even create one together at the end. So let's get right into it. So what makes a strong female character? Wrong question. The good question is, what makes a strong character? Remove the female angle for now and discuss what strong means. What does strength look like? Is it just the ability to fight bad guys? Well, maybe, but is that real strength? Maybe it's the ability to lift weights easily. I guess that's a form of strength. What about status or fame? I guess that can be a form of power, sure, but is that real strength? See, to me, and to a lot of people, I think, real strength is enduring hardship to achieve something. It's really easy to claim strength when you have no struggles and can endure any punishment without effort. I find far more value and respect in a character who goes through the most painful or trying ordeals and yet comes out stronger, changed, or better. The first Tomb Raider game was a great example of this. Lara Croft and her ship crashes on an uncharted island, a cursed island as it was, controlled by an insane cult intent on killing her and her friends, and Lara has to learn to survive, fight, and engage in the most savage, brutal, and lethal actions that she's never had to confront before, and in the end she comes out stronger, wiser, more confident, and more invested in her journeys. And we admire Lara because we saw what she endured and what she fought through. We see pain that she suffered, struggles she had to undergo, and thus we understand the badass she became in the end. There's a reason we root for the underdog. The world champion who never suffers a defeat and wins every competition, well, we get bored of that. But the surprise underdog who works his way to greatness and earned his win through blood, sweat, and tears is someone worthy of admiration. And the reason why is because we see strength in the overcoming of difficulty. That's why we don't like perfect characters. People always say, oh, Mary Sue's are just perfect. They're not phrasing it properly. Mary Sue's don't undergo struggles. They don't undergo anything that makes them struggle or something that hurts them or something that they actually have to try. Most of the time, they're so strong, any struggle, big quotes, their struggle they go through isn't really anything of the sort. They overcome it without much difficulty or without much loss, if any loss. Now, compare characters like, let's use a different example here. Let's compare characters like Rock Lee and Neji from Naruto the anime. A dynamic that I think was set up brilliantly but poorly seen through in my opinion, but I digress. Neji was a prodigy, born to a powerful family with a powerful natural talents and bloodline ability that set him apart from everyone else. He was considered a genius and never knew the taste of defeat in his entire life, up until a certain point, but that's not what we're talking about. Lee, meanwhile, was a loser. He had no natural talent or skill, worked himself to the little breaking point, and dedicated himself to only one form of fighting that finally saw him become something rather spectacular. His only dream was to prove that he could be a great ninja with only his physical fighting arts, and that he too could triumph over a genius with natural talent through his hard work and dedication. So tell me, did you root for Lee or Neji in the end? Now, as for me, I wanted to see Lee succeed. That's not because Lee was super strong or powerful, though he was these things. It was because we knew what he'd suffered and fought through to become who he was. We know the pain he went through. We saw the trials he had to overcome. We saw that Lee was not someone that everyone liked. He was not someone with natural abilities. He was not someone who was just special. He was someone who was not special, really struggled, really tried, and overcame. Think about it, guys. That's what we like to see most of the time. We like to see a character who overcomes something heavy and becomes better for it. The underdog trope. But let's keep going. So the first step to writing a strong female character is understanding what strength is. Okay, it's the capacity to face pain and hardship, right? And the tenacity to work through it despite that, of course. If you remove the pain that a character feels in their life, if you make them invulnerable and unbothered, it creates a sort of cognitive dissonance. You don't care about their struggles because you know that they aren't actually overcoming anything worthwhile to them. The Mary Sue, or the strong woman character that we hear about so often in fiction, is the kind of character who tries to tell you, oh, I've gone through hardships, I've gone through difficulties, I've had to struggle, when in reality, we know and can tell they haven't. They create the illusion of telling you, hey, care about me. I'm a very sympathetic, empathetic character, when in reality, there's nothing we can relate to because they're already winning by the time we meet them. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, another good ingredient in strong characters that I've noticed, especially female or otherwise, is some kind of weakness, a holdup or struggle that they specifically struggle with. A good example of this is Ephriel Stern. Now, many of you don't know who this character is, but in Warhammer 40k, she's a very interesting woman. I suggest reading her book. It's really good. She's cursed to carry the psychic wrath and pain of 700 tortured sisters of battle. She has tremendous psychic powers that rival the demigods known as Primarchs. She's so immensely powerful that even demons of the warp are afraid of her, and she's also hated by her own allies. Her fellow sisters of battle see her as a heretic, and the ecclesiarchy consider her a pariah. She is not welcome amongst her own allies, but is loyal to the very emperor she worships. What a paradox. She has outstanding, unmatched power, but struggles with her very existence and how she relates to those around her, with her only friend being an Eldar pariah who himself is an outcast to his own people. This is a struggle of her faith and a struggle for her socially. She's unliked by many and revered by others. Always an outcast despite her power. We find investment in her, not only in her battles, but also in her struggles of faith and amongst her own allies and supposed friends. Sometimes the real key to appreciating a character, even if they are really strong, is not in how strong they are in defeating up their opponents, but in how they relate to others. I think that was always one of the problems I had with characters like Captain Marvel in her movie. She had amazing power, and you could have created an interesting character around that. She has this amazing power. How does she relate to other humans? How does she feel about realizing she actually is an Earthling? She is from Earth. She has, well, not every single memory we see with her and every interaction she has on Earth is so bland, cookie cutter, and she has no real emotional response except for me angy. That's the only emotion I remember her ever having. That movie was painful. Let's move on. Now, let's dispel a quick myth. I want to dispel a quick myth while we're here. For some reason, people seem to think that if a woman is in love with someone, they are turned into just a waifu or love interest, and thus they lose their strength or status as a strong character. Somehow they seem to think that if you make a woman in love with someone, they're no longer strong. And this is not only incorrect, it's actually detrimental. A love interest not only adds to the character's existing stakes, but also gives them motivation, drive, and desire. Something to aspire for and towards. See, a love interest adds a degree of emotional depth to a character. It shows us what and who they find appealing and gives us something they may potentially have to fight for. Something that they may risk losing that gives them further motivation. Love interests should not be seen as a hindrance, but see them for what they are, a source of strength. You don't need a love interest necessarily. I'm not saying you need one, but the idea that adding one takes away from the girl in question is foolish. In fact, what if the love interest was a form of weakness for her, someone in whom she loses a lot of her prior confidence, and you could explore that in her character? Good example, Boa Hancock from the anime One Piece. She's one of the 7 warlords of the sea, the pirate empress. She has incredible strength, beauty, and power. She's confident, gorgeous, and literally doesn't need men. However, she has one weakness. She's madly in love with Monkey D. Luffy. Luffy can somehow turn the hardest badass Titan woman Hancock into a high school girl with a crush just through a touch or a word.
This sucks.
Get your filthy hands off him!
Wait a sec! Why did the Pirate Empress just save Straw Hat?
Hey, Hancock, what the hell's wrong with you? Don't tell me you're resigning from the Warlord.
Shut your mouth! The screaming fury in my heart has rendered me deaf to your words. How dare you pin my beloved down with your boorish club and threaten him!
Thanks, Hancock.
Of course.
Watching this badass woman simp over a complete moron is not only hilarious, but it also helps us appreciate the humanity that is in her. She's not just a cold and ruthless badass, but a woman with needs, feelings, and empathetic ideas and desires. Being in love with Luffy doesn't take away from how amazingly powerful and cool she is. If anything, it only adds new context to some of the decisions she makes, who she turns her wrath on, and even why she chooses to act the way she does. So at the end of the day, in answering the question, what makes a good female character, the answer is the human beneath them. The reason strong female characters are so disliked these days is the fact that people who tend to write strong women don't want to make strong characters. They want to create self-insert wish fulfillment. They want to create women who don't feel pain, don't experience hardship, don't have emotion, and who beat up all the bad men who held them back. And the issue in this is that it flies in the face of reality. Women do have struggles. They do have emotion. They do experience hardship, and they can't always just fight their way through opposition. Sometimes they have to endure or face it head on. Why? Because that's what men do. That's life. And even a superhero has to come to grips with reality sometimes. And I think that's the problem. I think that's what people have forgotten. They say, me writing a strong woman character, a strong person of color. Every time they say strong and then follow it up with woman, person of color, or LGBTQ person, whatever the label is, I already disconnect because I'm like, why are you saying this? Why not just say a strong character? Because that's at the end of the day what you're creating. A strong character. At the end of the day, you're creating a character that we can not necessarily relate to all the time. I don't want to use the word relate, but understand. Maybe even empathize with. We can look at what they're going through and say, I get it and I want to support this character. But the problem is if you create a character that I can't empathize with, that I can't understand, that I can't follow, that I can't in any way root for, what's the point? It is hard for me to root for a character who's already won before the story's even started. You know what I'm saying? It's very, very hard for me to do that. I need to see this character interact with hardship and see how they deal with it. Not just that they overcome it. I expect them to overcome it. They're the protagonist. How do they approach it? What do they suffer? What do they want? What do they deal with? That's what I want to see. So you know what? Let's have some fun and make a strong female character. We're just going to brainstorm something, okay? So I'm on a bit of a fantasy kick lately. So let's make our character a fantasy character. We're going to make a character. Here we go. I thought maybe a sorceress or an elf, but everyone goes that route. Everyone goes elf, human, dwarf, something like that. Let's do something different. Let's go orc. You know what? Because orcs are all over the news lately because of that whole Rings of Power debacle. Let's go orc. Okay. We're going to make a female
Kawaii!
orc. Okay, here we go. So, okay. Given that she's an orc, we can assume she's tough, strong, physically capable, independent. Okay, all good things. And we can go ahead and assume she's part of a tight-knit community of orcs. After all, if a society around them is made up of different races, it pays to be amongst your own kind. But what if that becomes a hindrance? What if she starts to step outside the normal boundaries imposed by her family or clan or gang? You know what? Actually, no. Let's go with gang. Let's go with gang. I like that idea. Let's go with gang. Can we have an orc gang? What about an orc biker gang? I kind of like the idea of that. Let's make this a modern day setting, fantasy-esque, and our character is part of an orc biker gang. All right. And we can make it that the city in which this takes place actually is made up of various races like elves, dwarves, orcs, and stuff. And maybe there's currently, maybe there's a turf war between the orc gang, dwarf gang, and elf gang, right? Okay, all right. Turn this almost into a West Side Story or The Outsiders. Wait, no, I say that as a joke. That's not a bad idea. Let's pursue that. Not quite on the same level, but I mean, we don't want this entirely Romeo and Juliet, do we? No, let's not do that. But I mean, if she fell in love with someone, that might... Okay, make a note of that. Okay, but not an elf or a dwarf. Let's just make it a human guy. Keep this simple for now. We can edit that if we need to. Nothing unique or special about him. Let's make him something like a school teacher or an accountant or something. He's something simple. You know what? No. Let's go school teacher. We can play off the idea that she feels less educated than this guy and sees him like a mentor or tutor, and that's her excuse for spending time with him, maybe. We'll name her Scarsha and him Joshua as placeholder names for now. Workshop them later. We'll workshop names later. Right now, I want to get an idea. I want to get a concept. All right, so working concept is she's riding with an orc biker gang. We'll call them the boys. She runs with the boys. All right, anyway. Big turf wars brewing for control of an area between three rival gangs. The orcs, the elves, and the dwarves. Whatever, okay. Now, right now, Scarsha is invested in this war and is all gung-ho about taking the area, going so far as to defy her boss's orders and tries to start a brawl a little too early with the rivals. Wait. No, hold on. Not boss. Let's change that. What if... No, I mean, keep it the boss, but what if the boss is someone closer? like a brother or a father or something. Make this more personal. Take note of that. Come back to it later. Okay, brawl. Back to the brawl. The brawl ends in her getting a bit beat up, so she has to pull out. She goes to a bar where she meets Joshua. He could buy her a drink, but why? Is he attracted to her, or... He might not be. He might consider her a problem, because after all, they're a gang in his neighborhood. Maybe he doesn't like the orcs at all. Not a racist thing, more of just you guys cause trouble in the neighborhood. Wait, no, what if in the brawl she lost her wallet or something, and so she can't pay for the drink, so he just pays for it just to help her out? So it shows that he's a nice guy. Okay. So she wants to thank him, but he says not to worry about it, because it's not a big deal to him. But she's determined to thank him somehow. So she tails him to his apartment so that way when she finds a way to thank him, she knows how to find him. And what if the dwarves or elves or one of the rivals see this and assume he's a friend? So they try to sneak in to use him as leverage. She notices, goes in and beats them up. And that's how she repays Joshua. And Joshua's grateful, but now the dwarves or elves or whoever it is are convinced now, yeah, they're friendly. They're friendly, so we can use him against the orcs. So Joshua could start to tutor Scarsha in reading or something. Like, he offers her some kind of compensation reward, and she starts to take to it, and maybe even she starts to enjoy his company. Maybe there does turn into a romance there. However, as the gang war gets closer, the elves or dwarves will try to kidnap Joshua and use him as leverage against the orcs. But, of course, the orc gang wouldn't care. They don't know who he is. Unless, maybe she told... No, she wouldn't tell them. Well, she'd obviously be upset. That's when she reveals she's been seeing him as a friend. Or maybe more than a friend. I mean, it depends on how she phrases it. And the orcs get angry at her. I mean, they would get angry because she did this behind their back to some random human and complicated matters. And if we made the boss her brother, what if her brother says, we're not going to stop the war just to save this human you fooled around with? So she fights her brother. She could beg her gang not to start the war until they've saved Joshua. And since they refuse, she brawls with her brother. Oh, that's cool. Okay, so she fights her brother to save Joshua. But she loses. Let's have her lose the fight. Because now she has to make a choice. Does she stand by her brother's decision when she loses? Or does she break the rules of the gang and go to try to save Joshua anyway? Maybe she could go... I just realized I'm starting to build this story when my whole point was to build a character. Okay, we're gonna stop there. I'm going to take these notes and put them aside for another video. This might be another story sharing video later down the line. I'm sorry, guys. But you see kind of how my thought process works when I build a character. Quite often, sometimes I'll start something and then it'll go places. My mind's weird like that. We'll stop here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Had a great time. I hope you learned something from this. I hope I wasn't too off the rails here. I don't always script these. Sometimes I just, go off the cuff a little bit. I hope that's okay with you guys. Anyway, point being, strong female characters. They don't have to be strong female characters. To make them good, you have to make them strong characters who happen to be female. Because at the end of the day, female, male, black, white, whatever we are, we're people. And if you want to write a strong female character, just make them a strong character. And we can talk about more about that kind of stuff in another video. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.